Hello there friends, it's Miss M back with another fun activity for my fellow speech pathologists, moms and dads, teachers, anyone really looking for a new way to include some of their child's favorite things in a fun activity that's still promoting our speech and language skills. So this activity is something that I actually learned from a friend of mine, Allison, another preschool speech language pathologist, who taught me the wondrous world of the knock knock box. And I believe the knock knock box is something that comes from Laura Mize, if you're familiar with her blog or her videos on YouTube. She has a Teach Me to Talk series that talks about all these fun ways to work on your child's speech and language goals with these very easy to access activities. And when I say easy to access, I mean I think almost everything in this box I found around my house or in my speech room. Just little toys and items that I can use to target certain goals for my students. And the nice thing about this is you can work on a lot of different goals with one very easy to carry activity. So for a knock knock box, we want to make sure, and let me just say too, I'm going to go through this, and this is just to inspire ideas for you, because you might be able to take this and adapt it to do whatever you need for your child, depending on where they're at. You always want to make sure you're meeting your child where they're at. You want to make sure you're following their lead. So when I pull out some of the items in this box, maybe think, well, my son likes dinosaurs. My son likes, stuffed animals. So I would want to use, or my daughter, I keep saying son. My daughter likes stuffed animals. I'm going to use those kinds of things to target their speech and language, maybe versus cars, because maybe they're not that interested. You might throw a couple things they're not interested in here. You might pull them out and you might talk about what they do to keep their learning going, right? But it's always better to make sure you include things that your child enjoys as well, because that's going to promote their desire to communicate, especially if it's in a knock-knock box. And the reason I say that is because when you have a knock-knock box, you can see it's a clear plastic box. Everything in there I can pretty much see. I can see that there's bubbles, I can see that there's a car, there's a cup. And so your child, if they really like bubbles, is gonna go, I want the bubbles, I want the bubbles. And so that is going to give them that opportunity right away, maybe to request it. Now with a knock knock box, I always teach this familiar routine. We knock knock, and that right there, you can work on that imitation of the action, and then open. So we have to knock first knock, then open. And then that helps build that not only imitation, but then we know, or I know, once the child's knocked, it might be their request to open. So they might not be able to open this, and that's kind of the idea. You should ideally have a box that you, the adult, can open a little bit easier than the child. This one is one of those snap ones that some of my students can open, some of them not yet. But sometimes you have the ones that have like the little flaps. Those might be a better idea. Don't put a padlock or anything on it though. You don't want it to take too long to open, because that's definitely not gonna decrease any tension or increase attention to the activity, right? You don't want any frustrated little ones because we can't get our padlock open. And I say that totally jokingly. I highly doubt anybody would think to put a padlock on a toy box like this. But just kind of to keep in mind, don't do anything that's too crazy hard for you. So after we say open, I'm gonna go like this. And let's say they're saying car and they want the car. Now, depending on how many times I've done this already, maybe I've already done it 3 times and had 3 times opening it in the speech room. So by the time we get to another thing, I might pull something out that's not the car. So let's say I pull out sunglasses, and maybe we'll start working on some yes and no questions. So I've got my handy dandy visuals, because Miss M always with her visuals. So we have yes and no, and so I might, say, oh, is this the car? And then have them answer or model for them yes or no. And then it might be a silly thing when they say, no, Miss M, that's not the car. And I'm like, oh, I'm so silly. Okay, say try again. Or I'll say try again, Miss M, to model that try again language, that it's okay to make a mistake. We get the car, then we can do yes or no. Now, some of my students aren't quite at the yes or no. So we might just pull out the car, and we might go, oh, car, and I might model what a car does, right, on the table, vroom, with my environmental sound, with the car, vroom. So we might be working on that. We might pull out, I might pull out the sunglasses, and we might do object functions if that's a goal for my child, or if we're, if I know that they can talk a little bit more about an item, I might say, where do sunglasses go, right? If we get our WH questions in there, what do? They protect our eyes. What do we do with a cup when we pull this one out? You might have a child you're working on specific vocabulary with. So maybe you've got one of those goals where it's to either identify or to label vocabulary in specific categories. So you might have those specific categories built into your knock knock box. Maybe it's transportation and animals. Maybe it's oh my gosh, just lost animals. I just said animals. Maybe it's clothing, there we go, and body parts, right? So you have maybe a baby doll with some clothes in there, and you can pull things out and talk about where they go. So it just depends. You can build this box any way you want. Again, it might just be an activity to get some engagement with your child and just to have a little fun play activity because it's summer break and it's hot outside and you need to find interactive things to do inside. Great, go find yourself a clear plastic box, put your child's favorite toys in there, and just start working on this. Now, if your child, maybe you could make a fun game of hide and seek if you don't want to use a clear plastic box. You could do something like, oh, something's hiding in there. Maybe it's something that makes noise, like my butterfly, right? And you can shake it and have it make noise and kind of guess what it is. So there's just different ways that you can work on all those speech and language things and all that social interaction just with one box, and hopefully things that you can just find around your house. If we go back to object functions, you can put real forks and spoons in here if your child doesn't have any play forks and spoons, as long as you're monitoring that, right? Take them out before you go on to the next task, or get this out of your child's way, because I don't think a fork would be safe to be running around the house with. But if you are there with your child and you want to use those real life things with them to talk about them that make it more meaningful, then go for it. It's really, you build this however you want. I just wanted to introduce it to you because this has been a miraculous thing for me to use in speech therapy. I tend to use this box a lot when I'm working on identifying and when I'm working on yes/no questions, and then also object functions. Those are why I went over those main ones. But again, that imitation piece is also so huge in there. That sabotage is also so huge at creative stupidity, because you are giving an opportunity to communicate. Remember to be observing your child, making sure that you know kind of like, well, what are they gonna go for in here? What do they like? How am I gonna follow their lead with this? Make sure you're at their level, you're face to face. Make sure that you're waiting and you're giving enough time for that response from them, and you're not prompting them too much. So if you're doing yes/no questions, give 5 seconds to see if they'll respond to your yes/no question. And this is just a really fun way, again, for me to be using all of my little strategies. So giving a child wait time, waiting to respond to those yes/no questions if that's what you're doing, or waiting to give you the object function if that's what you're doing. But making sure that you're taking that time, making sure that, again, when you're using objects that are something that your child prefers, you're following their lead by using what they like, you're including their interests. And ultimately, you're having fun. That's the idea, right? I hope this inspires you to use what you have, to remember that you can make anything fun if you just keep it enthusiastic. All right, friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a great day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye. Want to give them a reason to communicate. So I want them to be able to see, oh, you hear that? I want to say, oh, my musical butterfly is in there. And how do we do that? So I teach my students a routine called knock knock. And, oh my gosh. There's no off switch.